If you're a lower to middle market company, right now your ability to commoditize your creativity is the best thing you can do to separate yourself from others. My name is Freddie Hart, and over the last 6 years, I've worked with 6, 7, 8, and even 9-figure businesses, helping them create content that makes an impact. So today, what I wanted to talk about is how you can commoditize the creativity process, because what this allows you to do is it allows you to have consistent content at a high level at a very cost-effective rate. And so a little bit about how I got started with this process. I've been blessed over the last 6 years to work with some big companies that have national scale. I've worked with companies in real estate. I've worked with companies in home services. I've worked with companies in security and safety. And one thing that I've learned is that as companies are acquired and they become part of a platform, or as an investor starts to invest in other areas outside of where I physically am, I had to figure out a way to get content for them that still looked consistent. And so I talked about this on LinkedIn the other day, but there was a time where I used to just run the arbitrage model in content. So what that basically meant was that a business would call me. They would say, "Hey, Freddie, there's a video that we want to do. Can you do it?" I would call a videographer. They would tell me they could do it for $1,500. I would call the business back, and then I would tell them it would cost $2,200. And I would really just run the middleman for the situation. But the problem with being the middleman in a lot of businesses is it can't scale without you. And then you don't have control of the process. So the people you're working with, in essence, have the leverage. For example, if you own a construction company and all you're doing is just marking up the work and you have the crews doing all the work, well, in essence, the crew somewhat has the leverage, because if they walk out, then you really don't have any business. And so I didn't want that to be really the way I built my business. And so with that happening, I would say in 2021, 2022, and then my opportunities with working with private equity firms, real estate investment firms all across the country, I had to figure out a way to really create a system. And the epiphany I had was one day when I was watching an Apple commercial, and I was just watching the commercial, and I thought to myself, I said, if a videographer leaves Apple, it doesn't change how their commercials would look, because they've created a system to put out content at a large scale. And so that's great for Apple, and I loved that framework, but I also had to figure out how to do it cost effectively, because Apple is a company that has a whole in-house team, whereas a lot of companies don't necessarily have the resources to create an in-house team. And so I just sat down and figured out, okay, what's the most efficient way to do it? And so the way I really broke it down is there's two parts to commoditizing creativity and really being able to scale your organic content regardless of where your company is spread out. And so the first one is the internal team, right? I call this the brand engine. And so these are people who work with you a majority of the time and who you can help create the vision of what you're trying to do. So think about a video editor, right? Think about a graphic designer. These are people who usually you can get a lot of hours of their time, but they are going to be the people who get the content from the creators themselves, and they're going to be able to take that content and then bring it to life in what you're trying to do as far as having a consistent look and feel and standard of your content. So for example, in my own company, what we do is I have virtual editors and I have virtual designers. And so regardless of where we get the content, they know that when we're working with the client, there's a certain look and feel that we're trying to achieve. And so it's almost like a funnel. It's like any content they get, they know the output and what it has to look like, because we've spent time on the front end establishing that. And so that's the internal framework, right? And I recommend that you can get these people virtual. You can work with an agency, but all in all, you need to have somebody who clearly understands what you're trying to do. Now, the next aspect to the system is the external network, and this is really where your scale is going to be built. And so I've learned in my life that if you want to create something consistently, you have to have a system. And so when it comes to me and my team working with videographers, with photographers all across the country, you have to have a system in place for them to follow as far as a look and feel. Because if you don't, they'll do their own thing, and what they do might not be consistent with what you're trying to achieve for your content as a whole. And granted, I've worked with videographers all across the country while living in Atlanta. I always tell them the frame rates that they need to film, whether they need to film in log or they need to just film in a regular color profile. And so the reason why I do this is because I know the content I'm getting from them is what's going to be needed in order for the internal team to work. And then the benefit of this too is, from a cost-effective perspective, is that if you tell them exactly what they need to get, oftentimes you can pay a little bit less because you're giving them the exact things that they need. For example, let's just say I'm in Atlanta and I'm working with a videographer in Washington State all across the country. If I say, hey, I need a 1-minute video, well, he's going to have his ideas of his shots. He's going to have his ideas of what it should look like. And all that time and thinking and all those hours of editing is going to cause the cost of the project to go up. Whereas if I'm working with him and I say, hey, I just need these specific raw shots and I need them in this format, and then I need you to upload them to Dropbox, at that point, all you're paying for is their time. And so their time is a lot more cost effective than the result itself. And so I'll give you an example. I was working with a company a couple months ago in the life safety industry, and they had an event out in California. And so what I basically did is I connected with the videographer in California. I gave him the framework in which we shoot content. That way he could send me the raw files. He uploaded into a Dropbox. From there, what I did is I actually sent a Loom video to the video editor and said, hey, this is what I'd like the video to look like. These are the shots that will go in this spot. And then I sent it to the editor. He edited the final project. And from there, once I approved it, I was able to send it to the client, and they really liked the outcome. And I think what I've learned in commoditizing creativity is that you have to create a system in order for everything to be consistent, but also in order for everything to be efficient, right? Because if I get the content on a Saturday and I already have sent the editor the framework, now a video that would have taken a week for one person to create can now be turned around in 24 to 48 hours because there's multiple people to the puzzle. And then on top of that, the cool thing that I've kind of figured out is that if you create partnerships with multiple creatives in each city, it breeds competition, which results in people giving you the best price and delivering the best product. And so I think when it comes to commoditizing creativity, it's something that oftentimes is overlooked, but it's what allows you to scale, and it most importantly is what allows you to consistently have the same type of content across all of your platforms. And so if you can invest time on the front end determining what you want your brand look to feel like and what you want your brand to say as a whole, what you want your messaging to be, and then you bring other people together to really be a part of the assembly line, that's a lot easier to scale versus giving one person the leverage, hoping that they don't get frustrated or they don't leave, and then you have to figure out everything else. The more people that you can add to the process, the easier it is to keep the process flowing, because if one person falls out of the process, it's easier to replace one person than it is to replace the person. And so a couple ways that we do this as far as like really being tactical and making it happen is, the first thing that we look at is creating Loom videos, because Loom, whether it's me or the client, whoever it is, it allows them to speak their thoughts. And with Loom videos now, due to all the AI enhancements, it also creates a transcript. So then you can take that transcript, put it into Claude, Gemini, whatever AI model you use, and you can ask it to interpret what they've said. From there, the next thing that we do is we utilize Canva, because Canva allows you to really do a good job of embedding fonts, color codes, logos, all into one spot that's cloud-based. A lot of times people try to do that with Adobe, and then they try to do it with Google Drive, but it's like, if somebody doesn't have all of those things, it makes the process a lot harder, where we know that because Canva is a web-based service, if somebody sets up an account, they can get all of the assets that way. And then the next thing that we do is we utilize Dropbox on what's called a file request. And so this allows the creative who's taking videos or pictures to then upload all of their assets to this folder. That way you can easily send it off to your internal team of editors and designers. And so all in all, I think that commoditizing creativity doesn't necessarily make creativity stale. It helps you scale because of the fact that once you have a system in place and you have a certain look and feel that you've basically put on paper, it allows everything to look like that versus giving somebody else the leverage to tell your message and to share your story. So I hope this brought you some value. If it did, I'd love for you to share it, because at the end of the day, the goal of content is not only to be intentional, but it's to make an impact, and this process allows you to do that.